June 30th, 1882. Assassin's End. Charles Julius Guiteau was executed by hanging at the district jail in Washington, D.C., marking the final chapter in one of the most sensational political crimes in 19th-century American history. Guiteau was convicted of the assassination of President James Abram Garfield, a crime that shocked the nation and contributed directly to reform in federal government practices, particularly in the civil service system. Charles Guiteau shot President Garfield on the morning of July 2, 1881, at the Baltimore and Potomac Railroad Station in Washington, D.C. He fired 2 shots, one of which grazed the president, while the other struck him in the back near the spine. Although Garfield initially survived the attack, his condition deteriorated over the course of 11 weeks due to infection and poor medical treatment. He died on September 19, 1881. The prolonged suffering and death of Garfield amplified public outrage against Guiteau, who was immediately apprehended after the shooting. Guiteau claimed that he acted on divine inspiration and believed that killing Garfield would unite the Republican Party and benefit the nation. He had supported Garfield's presidential campaign and expected a diplomatic appointment as a reward for a speech he claimed to have written. When no appointment came, Guiteau grew increasingly delusional and resentful. His failed attempts to secure a post culminated in what he believed was a mission sanctioned by God to remove the president. The trial of Charles Guiteau began on November 14, 1881, and was one of the first major legal proceedings in the United States to feature a plea of not guilty by reason of insanity. The prosecution was led by George Corkill, the U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia, and the defense argued that Guiteau was mentally ill and not criminally responsible for his actions. Witness testimony highlighted Guiteau's erratic behavior, grandiose delusions, and history of instability. Nevertheless, the jury was not persuaded by the insanity defense, and on January 25, 1882, Guiteau was found guilty of murder and sentenced to death. Guiteau's execution took place just over 5 months later. On the gallows, he delivered a final statement that included a poem he had written, maintaining his belief that God would vindicate him. At 12:40 p.m., the trapdoor was released, and Guiteau was hanged. An autopsy later revealed that he had advanced syphilitic degeneration in his brain, possibly explaining some of his erratic behavior. The assassination of President Garfield and the execution of Charles Guiteau had a direct impact on the American political system. In the wake of the murder, public attention turns toward the practice of patronage, or the spoil system, in which political supporters were rewarded with government jobs. Garfield had expressed frustration with this system, and his death gave momentum to reform efforts. In 1883, less than 2 years after Guiteau's execution, Congress passed the Pendleton Civil Service Reform Act, which established a merit-based system for federal employment and marked a turning point in the professionalization of the U.S. civil service. The trial and execution of Guiteau also contributed to legal and public discourse on the use of the insanity defense. The high-profile nature of the case brought widespread attention to the legal standards used to determine criminal responsibility in cases involving mental illness. Though Guiteau's defense was unsuccessful, his trial sparked ongoing debate in American jurisprudence regarding the balance between justice and mental health considerations. In summary, the execution of Charles Guiteau on June 30, 1882, was not only the end of a national tragedy, but also a defining moment in American legal and political history. His crime led to tangible legislative reform, altered the public's understanding of mental illness in the courtroom, and underscored the fragility of the presidency during a period of political transition. The hanging of Guiteau closed a grim chapter in the American narrative while also helping to shape its legal and governmental future. For enthusiasts of historical ephemera, visit history-collectors.com to find collectibles that might complement your collection. You can own a piece of history.